So you have just started playing League. It is a good day to be alive, man, and I am so happy that you are here. You've got 5 or 10 games under your belt so far, but things aren't really going well yet. Trust us, we know exactly what you've been going through. League's been out for 15 years, and it's one of the most competitive games in the entire world. And everyone in this community expects you to have been playing that entire time, making the new player experience honestly pretty miserable. Let's just say it outright. That's why in this video, we are going to be sharing 7 extremely simple tips to help you on your League journey. These are the tips for true beginners that are going to help you have a much better idea of what's going on in the game and how to start having more successful matches immediately. Now, our first tip definitely has to do with how nerve-wracking League can be for new players. There is so much going on the map, and everyone's pinging, everyone's typing, everyone's telling you what to do. Man, it can be overwhelming. With constant action that you're responding to, it is easy to make mistakes, dying and falling behind. So to help remedy this, here's something you should know. There is a massive difference in League between early and later game objectives. Objectives that spawn in the late game, such as Baron Nashor giving your team an insane buff to all your minions that help you push and destroy enemy towers. The Elder Dragon, which gives you a powerful execute, which, let's be honest, all but guarantees you to win any fight you take. And the Dragon Soul buff you get when you stack 4 individual dragons gives you a permanent buff that's so strong that whichever team ends up getting it tends to win the game. Now, on the other hand, the early game objectives like Void Grubs, individual early dragons, and the Rift Herald pale in usefulness by comparison. So here is one of our best bits of advice on this. It is genuinely going to be okay to not feel pressured to fight over these objectives early on. It's very common for less experienced players to overvalue them because, well, you're encouraged to prioritize anything called an objective in most video games. And you're definitely going to get constantly told by your teammates that you need to contest them in League. Players will often just fight over them even when they have no chance of winning that fight, and they just end up dying for no reason. So our tip here is really simple. Feel free to not fight over these early objectives if you don't think you can. Are you low on health? Low on mana? Is your ultimate not up? Trust your gut instinct. You're more than capable enough to make a decent decision based on what resources you currently have. Now, we know that a lot of newer players just default to following what their teammates are doing because you think others know better than you do. But trust us, your teammates, they're not any smarter than you are. So don't follow them and die for free over these early objectives. It's not worth it. Now, of course, if you do think you can fight for something, you do want to help your team. The early objectives do give okay-ish benefits that are going to help you win, but again, they're not so important that you should throw your life away over them. Now, we understand how overwhelming it can be to get into a MOBA like League. Everyone expects you to know what's going on at all times, when you don't know what a tenth of the champions in the game even do yet. And looking up guides on YouTube, let's get real, it feels almost useless. Content creators throw out League terminology, expecting everyone to know what they mean, even in guides aimed at beginners. That's why we created something we're super proud of over at Skillcapped. We have a total beginners course dedicated specifically for new players trying to get into League. Now, while this video does have some good tips to help you get started, it's nowhere near to how useful our course is. We consulted new players just like you about what they felt they needed to get into the game. We don't assume that you know anything in this course. We help build your knowledge from the ground up so you can start being competitive to play with your friends or to play ranked as easily as possible. This type of course exists nowhere else on the internet because after playing so long, no one in the scene has any idea what it's like to be a new player anymore. So it's almost impossible to find good advice anywhere else on the internet. And then once you get past that beginner phase, you're going to have access to our premium courses to get even better at League, if that's what you're looking to do. So if you're interested in the most effective way to get into League fast, then use the discount link below to sign up. You will not regret it. All right, and moving on. Like we said, you should not fight over objectives when you don't think you can. But how do you know when you can fight over something? Well, here's a simple guideline to follow that's really going to drastically increase how many fights you win. You should almost always look for a fight immediately after you complete a core item. This advice is really easy to follow. You just bought a finished item? Then go brawl, man. But we're going to also explain the logic behind this thought so you understand why this can be so beneficial. After your first game of League, it is obvious that building items makes you stronger, and those items are comprised of components that build into the completed form at the end. What you should understand about this is that completed items are a much bigger power spike than the components they build out of. To visualize this, think of the item components as kind of a bump in power. You're definitely getting stronger, but not by a crazy amount. On the other hand, completing an item is a much bigger bump in power, usually because they come with unique effects that are likely very powerful on your champion. Again, we just want to say, we're about to explain why this advice is good, which is going to seem a bit complicated at first, but roll with me here. But you do not need to fully understand what I'm about to say. If you don't get it, that's fine. You can still apply our tip anyway, which is just to fight after buying completed items. Here's some common outcomes that you're going to experience by following this advice. First, you might fight your opponent right before they get to complete their core item. So they're still going to be on components while you have your completed one. In this example, fighting would be great as the player has 2 core items versus 1 core and some components. This is a sizable advantage for you. The second outcome is even simpler than this. You fight after buying, but your opponent has also just bought. Having that same amount of core items makes the fight even, which is more than fair. The third example is from when you've lost early on. When playing from behind, you want to give yourself as high of a possibility to make a comeback. By fighting right after buying a core item, your opponent might still be building into their next one. So for example, if you fought right after building your second core item, your opponent could still be sitting on the components of their third one. Fighting now would still put you at a disadvantage, but it's not insurmountable. Basically, to sum this all up, you're really trying to avoid the following. If you fight after buying an item component and your opponent has just finished their next core, then you'd be at an even bigger disadvantage. You're almost guaranteed to lose that fight, which is obviously not good. Now, of course, there is a ton of nuance in this game. We get that, and following this advice, it won't win you every single fight. But as a new player, if you've got absolutely no idea of when you're strong or when you're not, or when to brawl, then just remember our core item rule and you're going to be okay. Fight right after shopping and you're much more likely to come out ahead. Okay, so skirmishing. It's something you'll definitely do a lot of in League. Many players get into the game because of a common notion that League has a lot of strategy elements. And while that's definitely true, League has moved way more towards rewarding skirmishing and fighting skill over the years. And as a result, your mechanical skill in the game, it does matter a lot. Don't be afraid by hearing this though. You don't need to be a 16-year-old who plays 10 hours a day and has amazing reflexes to perform. But you should definitely care about some of the more important concepts that will make your champion feel a lot more fluid and allow you to score more kills. The first is a super simple one that you may not be aware of if you're new to MOBAs, which is called attack moving. Basically, you're going to have a hard time playing your character. It happens if you're always trying to right-click who you want to attack. For example, let's say you're a melee character and you're trying to kite around the enemy champion to both hit them and dodge their spells. If you only use right-click, you're going to find it's really difficult to do it. You have to right-click where you want to move, then put your cursor back on your opponent, then back to where you want to move, and so on and so forth. It is very easy to mess all this up, causing you to cancel auto attacks, misclick, and so on. It's especially deadly on ranged champions that want to keep their distance. So let's say you're running away from a threatening melee champion, but you want to keep hitting them as you run away. If you right-click, walk back, and then right-click to hit them, you might misclick the ground, causing your character to walk into the enemy champion, which could absolutely get you killed, and it's probably happened to you. Instead, you should adjust the attack move keybind to fix this issue. When you press A, your cursor is going to turn red, and you're going to get an outline of your auto attack range. Then, if you left-click the ground, you're going to automatically move to where you clicked, and then hit the target closest to you. If you're already in range of someone, though, you're just going to begin auto attacking immediately. And as you can see, this keybind lets you get away with less precise clicks. It sounds complicated. I get what I just said could sound like that, but it's so easy to do. And the best part is that it's going to make your life infinitely easier if you're not already using this. Notice how we can hit the target in front of us without ever having to accurately click on them. Our cursor can stay horizontal the entire time by simply using a combination of regular right clicks and auto move clicks. This is a lifesaver for attack-based champions trying to kite in between auto attacks because it allows your clicks to be imprecise. Notice how, unlike in our previous example, it is much easier for the marksman to keep their range by using this technique. Their mouse is always behind them, letting them kite and hit their opponent at the exact same time without requiring much effort at all. Now, there is some tips to improve this though. Attack move technically requires 2 clicks. First A to change your cursor and bring up your range indicator, and then a left click to input the command. Now, if you want to turn this into 1 click, go into your settings, hotkeys, then open up player movement. From there, change the keybind from player attack move to player attack move click instead. This is going to make it so you only need to press that 1 keybind to attack move rather than having to left left click as well. Now, this is a personal preference though. Use whichever you prefer. Another issue you may run into though is that you won't have precise target selection. Let's say you want to hit the target in the back here. The problem is attack moving automatically prioritizes whatever target is closest to you, which clearly sucks. Open up your settings, go to game, scroll down, and enable attack move on cursor. This is a pretty awesome setting where your attack will prioritize the target closest to your cursor, allowing you to control your auto attacks just a little bit more without needing extreme precision. And by the way, having the right settings makes this game so much easier to play, so if you're looking for more useful ones just like that one, then check out our settings guide right after this. So as for our next tip, it's going to make your movement even more fluid combined with attack moving. What you want to do is cancel the wind down animation of your auto attacks. You can think of your autos in 3 separate parts: the wind up animation, where your champion begins the auto attack, then the actual auto animation going off, and then the wind down, where your champion kind of just resets their weapon. This final animation, it's completely useless. All you need to know is that right after your auto attack goes off, you should input another movement command to cancel the wind down, letting you begin moving a whole lot faster. This sounds way more complicated than it really is. All you're doing is auto attacking and then immediately trying to move afterwards. Now, we'd suggest going to the training tool and getting a feel for this. Champions with high amounts of attack speed definitely benefit from mastering this concept along with attack moving. And as you can see, your champion will seem much more fluid to play by canceling that wind down animation. Now, something to note is that this timing changes based on your attack speed. So in this example, Trundle's W ability places a field on the ground, giving him a ton of attack speed while it's active. You can see that as it ran out, he ended up messing up the timing on an auto attack here. So while you're in the training pool, we definitely suggest buying various amounts of attack speed when practicing. This way you can get a better feel for how the timing is going to change as the game progresses. Trust us, this absolutely is not hard to learn either. Just spend a few minutes in the training tool and you are going to have this down in no time. So before you can even get to a new fight to use all these new skills though, you need to power through the laning phase, which involves obviously killing minions, and a lot of them. And probably the single most beneficial skill any new player can learn is being a bit more consistent in scoring the last hits on every minion. Minion Gold is by far your most reliable income in League. And to put it into perspective, on average, 15 minions is about a kill worth of gold. So if you find that you're mistiming the last hits on minions, then you're throwing tons of gold down the drain, and you need to listen up to our following tip. So later into the game, your spells do tend to destroy waves, so it's much easier to score last hits late in the game. But in lane, you're typically trying to secure each minion with your auto attack or a weak spell. To make this more consistent, pay attention to how much damage you're dealing with your autos or abilities. Keep those numbers in mind at all times. Then on last hits that you're going to be unsure about, you want to left click a minion to open up their information panel on the top left. What most players do is eyeball it and try to guess when they should last hit. But with this panel, you can wait for the minion to drop below the health threshold of your auto or spell. This way you're going to know for certain whether you can score last hit or not. And of course, this isn't a tip you can implement every time, all the time. But if your opponent is trading aggressively in lane with you, you're not going to have time to click on a minion and focus on its HP at the top left. But at the very least, you can use this whenever you have breathing room and you aren't being pressured, and especially on the cannon minions. Securing those is the equivalent of 3 last hits, so you definitely want to do everything possible to make sure you don't miss those. As simple and newbie as this tip sounds, even the very best players in the world still use it consistently. That's just how effective it is for securing those all-important cannon minions. Now, on the topic of killing minions, later on into the game, waves start dying pretty quickly to your spells. However, there is a common issue that we notice a lot of newer players dealing with. Settings guides all over YouTube, and including our very own, will often recommend to newer players that they should quick cast their abilities. If you haven't done this yet, we would recommend doing so here in the settings. Basically, it just makes it so you don't have to press an ability and then left click for it to go off. Instead, your spell's going to go off immediately after pressing the initial keybind. This is quite important in League as it allows you to combo abilities a whole lot faster. But we found that newer players often suffer a huge issue when using quick casting, particularly around minion waves. Most champions have 1, maybe 2 spells that deal area of effect damage, which allows them to clear waves. But if you quick cast your spell, you might misplace it, not hitting all of the wave. Now it's going to take you forever to kill all those minions, which can significantly reduce your ability to help your team at fights or objectives. In League, you're going to be interacting with minions a whole lot, so you definitely don't want to be slow at clearing waves. You're going to spend a lot of time doing a whole lot of doing. And so you want to make sure you have both a quick cast keybind for your spells, but also a normal cast one. Typically, players are going to use a shift modifier so they can use the normal cast version when needed. Now, as you can see, this lets you line up your spells perfectly, allowing you to clear those minions quickly. Now you're going to have way more time to join up with your team and enjoy the fun parts of the game. There's a wide variety of spells in League which will interact with minion waves in a bunch of different ways, so using normal cast is extremely important, particularly on mages who are a bit more ability focused than other classes. Now, for our all-important final tip, let's talk about vision. Your trinket gives you periodic wards, which are important for lighting up the map with information. The problem is, these are limited, so you want to get the most value possible out of each and every ward. You want to be able to consistently spot potential threats coming your way so you're caught off guard less and less often. So here's the tip. Try not to mindlessly place your wards. An extremely important concept you want to keep in mind is that you want to place them in areas with high traffic and where you can scout multiple paths. For example, if you're a mid laner, putting your ward in the brush beside you is kind of mediocre. You're only going to see enemy champions if they come through specifically in that area of the map. It's still useful and we'll give you that, but we can absolutely do better than this. We'll just give you some of the best ward locations in the game here so you always know how to get the most out of your trinket cooldown. You're going to notice that the areas that we do recommend cover multiple different paths enemy players can take, giving you the highest chance of spotting them. One of the best wards you can place is around the Raptor camp. Any one of these 4 locations are going to do. It just kind of depends on what you feel you can get away with safely. Enemy junglers path through here consistently, and you're going to notice that there's a lot of different paths to take in the area, so your ward is going to both spot them and tell you where they're going to go next. Remember that every ward we're going to discuss here is simply just mirrored if you're playing red side. There's no difference whatsoever. The next is these 2 wards deep in the enemy's jungle, near their wolf and blue buff camps. Make sure you place this one just a little bit further up in the brush so it spots players going this way. Now, typically you can't place these all the time as they're quite deep in the enemy's jungle. The safer versions you can place are here and here. Now, both of these will usually spot enemy champions coming back out onto the map as well, so don't feel too bad if you can't get the deeper versions that we mentioned before. If you want vision of the other side of the jungle, then this deep Raptor ward that we've seen before is good, as well as this one right over here. But if you can't get those, then this Raptor ward we discussed earlier is way more than fine. And finally, one of the best wards in the game is one that you can only place after you've destroyed the first mid lane tower. Place it a little past the remnants of the tower, outside of the range of the second one. In League, players tend to gravitate and path toward mid lane quite a lot. If left alive, this ward's going to give your team a ton of information, and you should look to place it whenever possible. Now, of course, any area where your ward will spot multiple pathways from your opponent is more than fine. Just make sure you're actively thinking about where you place your wards and not just autopilot putting them down where they won't get much value. And that right there is a wrap on our 7 super easy tips to immediately apply as a beginner in League. Remember, if you really want to get into the groove of this game fast with a course dedicated to teaching players who are actually new to the game, then check us out over at Skillcapped. We promise you we can get you comfortable playing League in no time. A discount link to our site is below, and other than that, we'll see you next time.